A former Charleston County employee has filed legal action claiming a magistrate judge subjected him to repeated sexual comments and unwanted contact inside of the courthouse. Conduct, he says, was tolerated by staff and ignored by the county. That lawsuit was filed on July 2nd against Charleston County Judge Mary Page Adams by Adrian Lewis. Live 5's investigative reporter Emily Johnson joining us now to give us more details about that lawsuit. But before we get into those allegations, Emily, tell us a bit more about Judge Adams.
Well, Raphael, Judge Mary Page Adams was appointed as a Charleston County magistrate judge in 2023. Her term expires on April 30th, 2027. And Adams previously worked for the Georgia Office of State Administrative Hearings before beginning her time at the East Cooper Courthouse in Mount Pleasant. Documents claim this first began when Adrian Lewis was assigned to the East Cooper Courthouse, where he performed courtroom duties. The lawsuit states that over the course of more than a year, Lewis was subjected to repeated unwelcome sexual comments, physical contact, and overly suggestive behavior by Judge Adams. It claims the conduct was openly witnessed and at times encouraged by courthouse staff. Multiple instances between Adams and Lewis were cited in documents alleging Adams placed her hands in Lewis's hair, exposed portions of her body, engaged in flirtatious behavior, sent suggestive text messages, and used intimate terms like honey and sweetie within a workplace setting. Documents say, quote, despite the obvious and ongoing nature of the misconduct, Lewis was actively discouraged from reporting the behavior and was warned that doing so would result in his termination. The lawsuit states that due to the workplace environment, Lewis was forced to resign from his position in September of 2025. Now, we tried to contact Judge Mary Page Adams at the East Cooper Courthouse regarding these allegations, but have not yet heard anything back. Charleston County responded to the lawsuit and stated that the county cannot comment on pending litigation. At the First Alert Desk, I'm Emily Johnson. Back to you.
All right, Emily.